is going to look at reflections of the Africa Domain Name System Forum over the past 10 years. As most of you have heard, this has been a journey, and many actors have been involved in this journey. Even as we come to the 10th Africa Domain Name System Forum, the effort or the focus is to bring in new voices into the DNS conversation, to move away from the traditional circles of techies, maybe registries and registrars, and expand the circle to users who are affected or impacted by the DNS forum. So to take us through this session, we are going to have Mr. Molehe Wesi. I request Molehe if you can join me up on the stage to moderate the session in place of Angela. We are going to have Kevin Chege from the Internet Society. Kindly join me up on the stage. We are going to have Pierre Dandjinou from ICANN. And we are going to
recording
have
in progress.
Who is a past president of AfTLD and the outgoing or the immediate former manager of the NIC.SN, the CCTLD for Senegal. So Dr. Alex is joining us online, and he is ready. He'll make his intervention as the moderator guides us. So again, as we settle in, I would like to invite all the panelists to join me up on the stage. Once again, we have a very active conversation going on Twitter and on various social media handles. Of course, we have hashtag Africa DNS Forum. You can tag at AfTLD, at ICANN, at KENIC. We can also add the we can also add all the CCTLDs that are in the room, or all the organizations that are in the room, so that we propagate the conversation that is going on online. May I request if someone could reach out to Pierre so that we start? Thank you. Mr. Wesi, you have the floor. You can introduce yourself and then introduce your panel. Dr. Alex is online. He's the only remote participant.
No, thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all distinguished guests, all protocol observed. My name is Molehe, middle name is Michael, surname is Wesi. I have the privilege of leading an organization called the ZA Domain Name Authority, which is out of South Africa, responsible, of course, as the CCTLD manager of the country. So I think that would be my introduction, and it shouldn't be about me, more about the panel. I'm not sure how to do this, Program Director, because some of the panelists, they don't need any introduction. They are familiar faces within the space, within the sector, within the community. But for just being inclusive, I will start with Dr. Alex, who's online, to really just introduce himself. And then, of course, I'll move to those that are in the room. Dr. Alex, are you there?
Yes, très bien. Je vous entends très bien. Merci beaucoup. Je suis Alex Corenthin. Je suis
It's just fine. My name is Alex Corenthin, and I am the technical manager of .SN. which is nick.sn, and I retired recently. So I am very glad to still be able to take part in this discussion, which I hope will shed some light on everything we've accomplished, but also to set new milestones for the future of AfTLD. So thank you very much, Mr. Wesi.
Thank you, sir, for that introduction. I'll go to Mr. Pierre to introduce himself.
Good morning again. I'm Pierre Dandjinou, Vice President in charge of stakeholder engagement in Africa. Thanks.
Thank you. Kevin.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Kevin Chege. I am the Director, Internet Development at Internet Society.
Thank you very much. I think just to set the tone for the conversation today, I just want to maybe share some snippets of information that I have, or unearthed as I was preparing for this particular session. It goes without saying, those that are in the room and those that are joining us online acknowledge the impact, both positively and negatively, of the internet. More so to the center of that is what we do, our bread and butter, which is of course looking after the DNS infrastructure and provisioning of those services. Without wasting more time, I think it's quite also important to acknowledge in the past 10 years, as we celebrate this monumentous event of our 10th African DNS Forum, to acknowledge that a lot of activity has taken place, and to cite a few and to just to give a glimpse to everyone. There's been a lot of companies that took advantage of the Web 2.0 boom. Just going to cite a few, and I think some will resonate with their colleagues inside the room and even those that are online. The first one would be, of course, Lyft. Everyone knows Lyft. That company was founded in 2012, and look at where it is now. Furthermore, there's Jumia, which is, of course, within the fintech space. You have Flutterwave, you have iCoca, and you have Yoko. Also notable within these past 10 years, you have big conglomerates or global tech companies, which actually were acquired by other tech companies. One of them that comes to the mind would be Instagram. Even though it was formed before the 10 years when we had our first African DNS, what is notable is that by the time it was acquired, it was worth $1 billion US. Now it has a market cap well over $100 billion US. This is the power of the internet. And I think with this said, it's actually set at the backdrop of acknowledging that African internet users have grown to a little above an estimated of 570 million users across the continent. This boasts, of course, approximately 13% share of the global internet users. So that is quite a sizable amount of users. I know we want more, but as developing states within the African continent, it's a feat that we have to celebrate. And I think this event will allow us to learn from those that have been there in the space, to learn from them, and to really acquaint us with what is it that happened in the past 10 years, what is it that we can take from those successes, failures, and what does the future hold for the DNS space within Africa. With that said, I would like to start with Kevin. I think I'll ask the same question to my panelists. Of course, they can try to respond to it as part of their opening remarks. Is to say, can they share their views, personal and of course institutional, of the journey of the African DNS for the past 10 years, focusing distinctly on the successes and of course the failures, and what is it that we need to learn from that particular journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Molehe. Pierre Dandjinou, Vice President, Stakeholder Engagement, and also Dr. Alex Corenthin, Executive Director, AfTLD, to all the organizers and of course our host for this year's event, and to all of you guests, I say good morning, and welcome to the DNS Forum 10th DNS Forum. So I will give a bit of background of the Internet Society, how we got involved with the DNS Forum, and what lessons learned and what we see for the potential future of what the DNS Forum could be. So as ISOC, ISOC's mission, or Internet Society, the mission of ISOC is to support the growth and development of the internet. We work with partners globally to achieve our goals. Our goals are for the internet to be an open, trustworthy, secure, and globally connected infrastructure for use for everyone. And our vision is that the internet is for everyone. So I'll give a bit of background of how we got involved with the event. So in 2013, which is the year of the first DNS Forum, the Internet Society had been in discussions with AfTLD and also with ICANN. And we came up with an idea of having an event to bring together the stakeholders in the DNS space in Africa to grow this space, to build capacity, but capacity being both technical, but also in the governance of DNS. So as with all things that are new, we sort of had to put out some ideas, try and see what would work as a formula, as a structure for the event. As ISOC at the time, we had a lot of experience with 2-day and 3-day events, especially one called AFPIF, which is an event to bring together the IXP community. And we sort of took those ideas and the experience we had to propose what could be done for this first Africa DNS Forum. And we had a lot of discussions with the ICANN team led by Pierre, and also with AfTLD, with Barak. And we came up with the idea of having a 2 or 3-day event, bringing together experts from Africa to discuss the domain name space, and also from beyond, who experts from other parts of the globe who could share their experience and their knowledge. So the first DNS Forum, all the partners, we became partners to bring together the event. This was ISOC, ICANN, and AfTLD. And everyone chipped in one way or another. So ICANN helped us with providing the venue. The first DNS Forum was held alongside the ICANN meeting in Durban. As ISOC, we tried to help bring in more experts from the region to attend the event. And AfTLD also brought in a lot of expertise in the subject matter that would be discussed. So that first forum, we learned a lot. We took a lot of input from the audience who attended, what worked, what did not work. And those lessons learned were used to improve the successive DNS forums that came after that. And if you go back and see, I'm sure it may be up on the DNSforum.africa website. If you look at how the agenda of the DNS forum was structured at that time, one of the challenges we had when we were coming up with the event was identifying the resource people on the continent who we could bring in to discuss the content which we thought was going to be relevant. So you may look at the agenda of the first DNS forum and see that we depended a lot on expertise from outside the continent. But over the years, as the next DNS forums came along, that changed significantly. And we had more and more experts in the region who could come and discuss DNS at a very, very high level, which is very good. And the objective of the DNS forum was, as I said, bring together experts to discuss what can be done to improve the domain name space in Africa, and also be a platform for knowledge sharing and experience sharing. And over time, that has been the case. And ISOC, our involvement was, I would say, mainly for the first DNS forums, the first 5 DNS forums, which was South Africa, Nigeria, then we had Kenya, then we had Tanzania. And then we sort of were heavily engaged with those. And then after the first 5, we sort of transitioned that to be entirely led by AfTLD and ICANN. So after the first 5 DNS forums, once we went to the 6th and the 7th, our involvement in terms of leadership for the actual event was reduced as we handed that over to ICANN and AfTLD. And by that time, the format was tried and tested. the expertise was, broad in the region. There were a number of supporters who had come in. And also the model that we used to come up with the DNS forum was actually replicated in other regions to organize other DNS forums in Middle East and beyond. So we felt that at that time, the DNS forum was a mature event and was in very good, capable hands of AfTLD and ICANN. So in terms of the future of the DNS, I would say it's come a long way, and congratulations indeed to AfTLD and ICANN and all the other partners who have brought it this far. And I can only say big things for the DNS forum in the years to come. And I'm looking forward to the following discussion here with Pierre and also with Dr. Alex as we discuss what could be the future of the DNS forum. Thank you, Molehe.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for that context. Without wasting more time, I think I will invite Dr. Kevin to maybe share his experiences. So Dr. Kevin, over to yourself. Thank you. Dr. Kevin, are you there? I think while you are still getting ready, not to waste more time, Pierre, maybe can pitch in, and then we'll check what could be wrong with his connectivity. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, Pierre Dandjinou, when talking on behalf of ICANN, especially what we believe has been the a lesson learned, out of organizing those different DNS fora in Africa. Of course, I think the first thing I would like to focus on is the importance of building partnerships that are quite sustainable. We started off, of course, we were having partners such as the ISOC, for instance. Of course, AfTLD and AF Registrar by the time they were formed. So it was important to have this partnership in place and to do whatever it took to really continue the organization of this forum. And the importance of it was understood by everyone in terms of what this is really contributing, in the digital transformation of the continent. It was about, knowledge sharing, definitely. It was about capacity building, definitely. And for us, it was also about, exposing the African DNS community to the broader space, broader environment, and so that this really make sure that this DNS, thrives, in Africa. And that's one point. The other thing I also noted was that there was some kind of, should I say, homework to be done by Africa. For instance, when you take the DNS, how are you managing those DNS, from your different countries? There are things that we are calling DNSSEC, in terms of security. We want you to sign your own file, for more security. Well, how do you do those things? So we, from ICANN, understood that it was important to really make sure that we do conduct these sort of, trainings, and that we make sure that different countries have their own work plan on this, and then their own agenda on when and how they want to really sign their own file. These are concrete things that we understood was important for Africa. Of course, the work should still continue because today, I don't know, but some of my colleagues in the room could correct me, but maybe we do have 10 countries, out of the 54 of Africa that has signed their own file. And it's important to know this. And we do have, like I said, colleagues here who can even further continue that. It's important. As ICANN, we are in here also to sort of listen to the issues that people are facing. When we launched the DNSSEC, roadshow after the first iteration of the forum, most countries signed what we were calling a kind of, it's not a contract, with ICANN. It was a kind of memorandum of understanding, something like that, whereby countries should lay down exactly what it intend to do in the coming 1 or 2 or 3 years' time. We noted that apart from a very few sort of number of countries, it didn't really work out properly. For many reasons, actually, because those who were committed to that one, meaning might be network experts, are not also those who are making decisions in the countries. So it took us time to really understand that if those action plans should really work out properly, we needed to be talking to those who take decisions, meaning your engineer may not have all of this in his term of reference, so definitely might not be doing the right thing while we were expecting him to be able to sign the zone 5, in the country. This is something that we understood. We were also concentrating on the CCTLDs, for instance, in the countries. We found out that it's more than that. We need to be talking to for instance, the ISPs, mobile operators, all of these things. So these are some of the lessons that we learned, that we need to go now to kind of new sort of DNS roadshow that is much more comprehensive, and addressing issues from different, components of our society. Now, maybe as I should not be talking this way, but one of the things we noticed that when you consider the CCTLDs, you might have the impression that the way they are running, the operation is much more conservative sort of thing. I was discussing with Quaynor, I think CEO earlier on, and one of the questions was about, how people are really, let's say it, consuming the domain names in Africa. One of his questions to me was, how come people are not renewing the domain names? And even when you give this, maybe for free, how come the second year they don't come in? And I believe this is a good question that we really need to address. You see, we know countries where people are really making money out of managing the CCTLDs. But we also know countries, in Africa where you do have maybe 500 or 4,000 registrations, out of 10 million, 100 million of population. So which means that something needs to be done. So we noticed that management was much more on a conservative side here. So how do we do how do you reshape the whole thing, the whole environment? We built this, we developed this DNS entrepreneurship center in Cairo. And the idea there was to actually facilitate, kind of training in terms of, marketing space, understanding the whole components of the business. And yeah, we are still open for that one. The other thing we noticed that it has to be, I think Sally said it this morning, kind of multi-stakeholder approach. When we started, I believe 10 years ago, this journey, we are not really talking about the registrants, for instance. We are just concentrating on registries, registrars. But how about those who are buying the domain names? How about that market that we are talking about? One of the things we did as ICANN also was to commit the first ever, study on the DNS in Africa, so that we had a picture, a full picture of what it means, when you talk about DNS, in Africa. And hopefully we are also going to launch an update of this study, and we are in the process actually, so that we provide, African different actors, the domain name with kind of tool that really shows exactly what's the situation, what the environment look like. And if you really want to know your business to thrive, this is definitely some of the things you need to consider in your business, planning. And finally, I would like to also say that this journey has not been simple. There were some issue about organization. How do you organize this thing when you are maybe 3 or 4, organization? each of them having its own rules, as managing, the meetings. How do you harmonize all of this so that it really comes as a good product that we all, understand and we all enjoy? Sometimes it has been an issue for us, and again, as ICANN, we may not be insisting on those things, but the internal, I would say, structuring of partners such as, AfTLD, for instance, we believe that we count on this association in Africa. But we also notice that AfTLD needs to eventually comprehend all of the 54 CCTLD in Africa. This is what we believe should be quite interesting for us. So this is something that they should be working on that. African registrars have their own issue, especially those that are ICANN accredited one. Of course, we are here to support them, but ICANN is not in the job of broadening the market. They should know about it. ICANN is about supporting in terms of providing different tools or means for maintaining your security, and managing this asset, I would say, or this resource, which is, of course, your resource, but it's a kind of global resource, because if you don't manage it properly, it's not just about your CCTLD, it's also about global access to internet. So all of those things are important. These are some of the lessons that we learned. And we really hope that the next 10 years, we are also going to have another story to tell, which is much more on the kind of happy sort of story, I would say. So let me stop here, and then I can come back later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that insightful knowledge you have shared. I think before I hand over to yourself, Doc Online, it's quite interesting, I made an observation. So as you are talking, I'm looking on Twitter, and the picture I see is of the four of us, and one has to acknowledge that it's all males on stage. So the question is, have we made great strides to be inclusive of other genders? And also, have we made great strides to be inclusive of young people that in one form or the other, we have to hand over the baton to? And I think we can park that question for now when we make the second rounds and we come around. For one, I know there has been some movement, but I'll allow the panelists to respond to that. So with that said, over to you, Doc Online. Dr. Alex, are you there?
Tout à fait. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le modérateur.
I am here. Thank you very much, sir. I am very happy to be here and to have heard Kevin and Pierre. I would like to congratulate the different organizations for being present, ISOC, ICANN, and I would like to thank them for promoting and setting up this current event, this 10th anniversary, 10th edition. And I think that we need to also congratulate all of the regional organizations and global organizations that were always there to support us and to get to this 10th edition and 10th anniversary. What I can say about the 10 years, well, first I would like to go back before AfTLD. At the time, CCTLDs, including Senegal CCTLD, which I know well, we had worked on relationships in order to increase our abilities. We worked on governance models. We worked with FNOC as well. It was an African organization, and now it's the African Internet Summit. And we gathered a lot of technical expertise at that time. And then the national registries came to a point where they needed to develop. And that's when AfTLD was set up. And I think it was a great success. Of course, there were several challenges. Pierre mentioned them. We needed to consider how to develop the relationships in order to build the community that we have today. And the current DNS ecosystem in Africa shows how vital we are. We saw the emergence of registries, and I would like to congratulate Kenya and Kenya. The 20th anniversary is a cause for celebration. It was a model of reference for many others, and we saw the evolution of the registry. We saw it reach a great level of maturity, and I would like to congratulate you for that. South Africa is the same. We have models. We can use them as examples. Now, what are the challenges? I think perhaps it is collaboration between registries so that we can define what the right reference model, the management model that we want to emulate in the DNS ecosystem, relying on local resources, local abilities, in order to enable our users, the registrants, to benefit from a great level of service, similar to what we have in other continents. That's the challenge for the future. But as of today, I think that we can consider that we made great strides toward the accomplishment of these goals.
Des registres nationaux, on s'aperçoit qu'il y a un développement.
What we can see today is that there is an outstanding local development. If I take the example of Senegal, as of today, we have 30 local registrars and a great collaboration amongst them. Many of them are ICANN registered or accredited. And so this is useful in terms of the development. You know, diaspora represents our customers. People post content, they need to do business, and so we need to be there to accompany them with the same level of tenacity as what we can observe in developed countries. So I am not pessimistic. There is work to do. And as Pierre said, we have a challenge, and that is the governance challenge. The national policies, the regional policies within the DNS industry do not necessarily match the digital development. The emergence of startup companies, whether it is fintech or other development sectors, requires that the DNS industry is present and supports that development. So how can we do it? What are the mechanisms that we need to set up? These are some of the challenges that we need to think about, because it will certainly have an influence on the development of Africa. The moderator mentioned the rate of presence in Africa for users, which is weak. So how can we increase it? How can we take into account new terminals? Because right now, that is an issue that we need to work on in order to promote this new emergence. And then we have technical difficulties. It is very difficult, I believe, to include youth. I sense that we have a difficulty welcoming youth. All of these actors that worked on the DNS, that developed registries, they are having an issue to find local talent. We talked about that at AfTLD. We talked about promotion and marketing, working on that, promoting CCTLDs. I think Joel Caribou of Kenik really did a lot within our association. And so these partnerships truly need to be recognized. I was involved as a member of the executive committee. I worked on increasing the presence of AfTLD. And as I keep remaining involved, I would like to recognize the different partnerships and collaboration efforts, the different models that we have promoted thanks to strong institutional partnership with ICANN, with the Internet Society, and with the African Union as well, that supported the organization of some of our events. And all of this, I think, in the future will help us move forward so that not just for 10 years, Pierre, I am more optimistic than you are, but I think that reasonably we can think that, okay, perhaps by 2030, we should have a reliable organization based on African values and African identity. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Doc, for sharing your experiences. And it goes without saying, it shows the amount of experience carried by my colleagues who are on stage and also who's online. I think before I open up for questions, my apologies, before I open up for questions, I would like to make a statement per se, and I'm not sure if the panelists will agree and those that are in the room. You know, it depends on how we view the challenges. For every challenge, there's an opportunity that is presented. And with the highly competitive space that we are in, where you have a CCTLD competing with these thousands of GTLDs, I believe we can convert those into opportunities to remain relevant and resonate with those that we serve within our respective countries and regions. So that has been my observation. Of course, all these challenges have been cited by the speakers, ranging from policy involvement of youth, technical, and also how, as you know, authorities, regulators, you really pitch legislation to ensure that you offer an enabling environment. And I think that also has resonated through the speech of the keynote addresser, where he cited that we need to offer platforms which are quite open, while we still, of course, safeguard those that are vulnerable within our respective spaces. With that said, I think I'll take the pleasure and abuse my power for a second as a moderator for the session, ask the first question to the panelists, and then, of course, we will then take from the floor. So the first question, I think it latches on to what I asked earlier on, is if there are one or two things as a panelist on stage and also online that you could share with emerging African leaders and youth within the space, what would those be? So that at least there's continuity within the space and they safeguard what has been built by yourselves and others, of course. So with that said, that will be my first question that I'm asking the panelists. I hope they are taking note of those. Program Director, if you can assist, are there any questions online?
Our remote moderator, Magali.
So yes, we had a question from the previous session that Mohamed Diop to answer. What is the role of the university in the BNS ecosystem?
I hope my panelists are taking note of those. I think I'll take one question or two rather per section. So I'll break it up in half, meaning this side and this side. On the left-hand side, are there any questions? By a show of hands, colleagues? No pressure. Yeah, you're included. Noted one question. While we bring the mic to yourself, second question, sir. There's two, and then There's one more, last more, the side. They're not biting the side. Is there any other question? No. I think in that order, Elian, yourself, sir, and yourself, sir.
Okay, yeah. My name is Alain Agina, wearing the AfNog hat today. I had a comment and question, so maybe I'll start with the questions that when we started the DNS Forum in 2013, it was co-host with ICANN meeting on Durban, but then it has evolved. But the question I'm asking is, are we able to keep this as a standalone event and have it sustainable? Okay, if we do it online, we may have some participations, but if it is to have a DNS forum as a standalone and people to travel for 2 days in this ecosystem, I'm asking if we will be able to make it sustainable as a standalone event. That is the question. On the comment side, okay, over the years, and some of the panelists mentioned is we have good partnership with ICANN, ISOC, Afrinic, but we are still, look like we are still carrying on with some of the challenges. So the question is, I don't want to be the one to say we fail, because from the whole day, everybody seems to see we are here to celebrate. And I don't want to be the Alain who always complain about something. So are we not, shall we not trying to accept that we fail somewhere? Don't say Alain say so. Alain is asking questions. Alain have not said we fail, but I'm saying, shall not we? Then, and we've been seeing things. When we started, we only have CC TLDs. Now we have a GTLDs, and we thought then the ecosystem is growing. And for example, with the support from .Africa, for example, we should have seen some improvement in the things we're doing. We have ZADNA. Monsieur ZADNA is there. ZADNA is the leader. When we look at the statistic in Africa, how come ZADNA is not taking the lead to help us to address some of these challenges so we can move ahead and tackle some of the advanced things? Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Yao Yatoun. It's a personal question. I'm from ICANN, but the question from myself. Following what Alain and I said, we are celebrating 10th anniversary. And I remember during one of the edition of the Africa DNS Forum, I think that was the one in Nigeria, we were talking about the payments method. That is just one aspect. So I want to say that we really need to see the progress really. So my hope is that if we have CCTLDs joining or participation remotely, it will be good to tell us if today they have solutions for payment, because at that time people were saying that it is difficult for them to get CCTLD's domain name locally. So the issue for them was to go to move from where they are to an office somewhere to make the payment. And at that time there was some solution for some countries. So today, what is the status in our CCTLDs? Has these payment issues been solved? And then the impact on the registration, can we see today an impact of the number of registration at the CCTLD levels? Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Shimanyula. I just wish to share something that one of the panelists mentioned. KENIC is one of the entities that are suffering from non-renewal of domain names. We do very well in terms of registering new domains every month, but come at the end of 365 days, they just disappear. And one of the things that you've done, you're working with our registrars to try and see how we can improve on this. And one of the areas you have identified as a growth area, and those of you from other countries, you might try this, let us look at the public sector, the government. The government has lots of education institutions. In this country, the government is busy connecting schools to the internet. And one of the things that you are pushing is that don't just give those schools internet, give them a domain name, give them an email system, so that the moment they start using the email, they'll want to keep it. Please try this at home, it might work for you. Now, my question is this. When I sit here, I know in Africa, we have some countries that have big numbers. We have countries such as Ethiopia. We have DRC. We have Nigeria. Okay? And if I look in this room, I don't think I've run into anyone from Addis Ababa. What is being done to ensure that we can onboard these big domains so that we can grow the Africa CCTLD? Because if you look at the contribution from Africa in terms of domain names, we are performing very dismally. What is being done to onboard our neighbors? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. I'm glad I'm not a panelist. But I think, Elaine, I will allow my panelists to really answer or respond to the questions. I will start with those that are in the room, and then I'll move on online. At the end, if program director permits, I will speak to the issue of collaboration, and I think that's what comes out. And also, program director, there's a question for you. I heard that what is it that is been happening in terms of payment options for CCTLDs? I think you will take that on. With that said, I'll start with yourself, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Molehe. So thank you all for the questions. All of them very interesting questions. I'll try and answer some of them. I think I'll start with the question from Mohammed Diop. What is the role of universities in DNS? So universities play an important role in educating the next generation of engineers. And I think when it comes to DNS, the universities here can really play a role in getting people to understand how DNS works, first of all, as a standard, as a protocol, as a technology. By understanding DNS, you'll get to understand, especially for the young engineers, you really learn to understand how the internet works. How is it possible that you can send an email from this, this connectivity we have here to across the world in just a matter of seconds? Because DNS is a key play in that. So I think for academia, I think an important role there for education and involving the students in understanding the organizations that play a role in DNS. So for example, when it comes to standards of DNS, organizations like the ITF, the work that ICANN is doing with, managing the resource. So that sort of stakeholder involvement of how the DNS ecosystem works, and even getting them to try and test DNS as a service. These days, you can very easily deploy a very simple DNS server with very simple hardware, small Raspberry Pi or a small computer. I think that is a very good way to engage the students early in understanding how DNS works. And once they're able to understand the infrastructure of how it works as a technology, they can really come to appreciate the work that's being done by registries and registrars and so on. So I think that would be that question of how academia can play a role. And I'll just add that one fun way to get students involved is with activities that are called hackathons, which is just a meeting like this where you get students to look at a challenge that is currently going on in DNS and asking them to solve that problem, because we have a lot of young talented engineers in the region. They just need proper guidance and a proper challenge. We used to organize an activity called hackathons with Afrinic and also with AFNOG, And those activities were geared towards hands-on work of teaching students how to look at a problem and try and solve it using, technical means, actually looking at code and trying to solve a problem. So for me, that's where academia can play a big role. Then I'll try to answer Elaine's question on sustainability and some of the challenges, what can be deemed to be success for the DNS forum. So I would look at it in two ways. The DNS forum, as it was designed with partners, was to be a platform for knowledge sharing and capacity building. And I think in that regard, it has been a success because we are able to sit in rooms like this and listen to all the stakeholder challenges, both from a local perspective, like what's going on in the country hosting the event, but also from a global perspective, trying to understand, regional and global, what's really happening with DNS. So I think in that perspective, the Africa DNS Forum has been a success, being a platform for knowledge sharing, understanding what challenges you're having, understanding what does it mean to be a registry in Nigeria, to be a registry in Botswana, to be a registry in South Africa. How can we interconnect those registries? How can we share services? And the discussion of the payment gateway, I think, was raised, I think, in the 7th or 8th DNS forum, I don't recall. But just having that platform of the DNS forum to discuss that, I think, is very important. It shows that in that regard of bringing people together to share knowledge, share challenges, is a good way. Is a success. In terms of now actually solving that, I think that is a challenge for the community. Barak is here, I'm sure is going to speak towards what AfTLD is planning to do as being to galvanize their membership to come up with a solution. But there are solutions there, and I believe if the community can come together to try and solve that payment gateway issue, it can really be done. And as the Internet Society, we are ready to help, to assist in any way. So, we're going to, I'll throw that back to Barak and let us know what they have planned in terms of bringing in a solution to that payment issue, because it's something we've had several times before. And then finally, to the question by our host, Mr. Shimanyula from Kenik. I think it's a very important question, how to bring in the new registries in the region, make sure that more people get to use the resources that are available from our various registries across Africa. I think it starts with capacity building. Over the years, and I've also been part of AFNOG. AFNOG is a training, an organization that focuses a lot on training engineers coming up with DNS. I would hear a lot of people say, I don't trust my local registry because it's not as stable as a GTLD. And in some of the classes we would try to explain to them that it actually does not matter what you use in terms of the name. It really matters on how the infrastructure has been laid out in terms of how stable is it, how resilient is it, how secure is it, how will it, what we call resiliency. If there is a fault, if something happens and DNS is affected, hosting a CCTLD, how fast can they recover from a fault? So that sort of perception, which is false, that one side is better than the other side. I think that is one way we can start to actually educate people, to tell them whatever you use as a domain, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is the infrastructure behind it, who are the team behind it. And one thing I've come to see is some of the registries in Africa actually are helping other registries develop. I know Kenik, for a matter of fact, I've been hosting a number of CCTLDs, the newer CCTLDs, the younger CCTLDs, to come and learn from Kenik themselves. So that's a very good indication of how that perception of the capability to host some of these services is not available. It is there. In terms of bringing in the young CCTLDs and the new growing economies, I think that is also another challenge for the DNS forum as it moves forward. I'm sure AfTLD and ICANN have a way to have a plan to bring in some of those big big organizations or big audiences that are coming up to use. And I'll just point in one more thing because it touches a bit to what's happening, especially in this country. Our regulator announced a roadmap for migration to IPv6 in Kenya, Communication Authority. And that roadmap to get more people onto IPv6, I think as a direct consequence of that, we're going to see even more dependence on CANIC as a registry to host all these new upcoming domains. So I think that rollout of IPv6 and growth, the growth of the networks will eventually lead to more domains being expanded, more. So just a note for the CANIC team here, I think as that roadmap is being deployed for IPv6, you're going to see a big growth in terms of the IPv6, bring more users and more devices online. So I think I'll stop there and allow the other panelists to contribute.
Thank you very much, sir. Over to yourself, Pierre.
Thank you very much. Brief response to some of the questions. I think Alain has two quite interesting questions, which is also the mark of Alain, who is just kind of troublemaker, because Alain he also has the responses actually. But he always put this thing to kind of push us, to provide whatever answer. But yeah, it's a good question. I mean, how do you make sure that the Africa DNS Forum, is sustainable, And also he spoke about standalone. A question could be, what exactly are you talking about, standalone? Is it something which is now fully supported, by registrants, for instance? Is that a forum that might not eventually dwell on any contribution from outside, from other organizations? That are questions to be put. Because, 10 years old, that's not enough, but that's something. And that the kids, now start really thriving for himself. That's your question, actually. I think actually. What I would just like to say is that as far as ICANN is concerned, I mean, the point is we do have a kind of strategy here for Africa, which is about, supporting what, Africa would like to. That's what we do. And I remember one of the visit of our CEO, president of ICANN to Africa Union. And one of the questions that was put to him there was, okay, what are you bringing to us actually? And we spoke about what we've been delivering in Africa, but the question keep on coming. And the answer was, well, as far as internet is concerned, what ICANN is doing is quite simple. We are making sure that, the internet, is stable, is interoperable, it's open to everyone, that it doesn't break, and so his answer was, well, internet is going to be what you African want it to be. May not be sufficient as a response, but it says what it has to say, meaning that it depends, on the Africans to see what the DNS forum will need to be in the coming 10 years, for instance. So things are possible. Let me maybe focus on one or three keywords, and that eventually provide some sort of answer to all of this. I think one of them is the knowledge, that we need to get from this industry. We have started this, we've been doing this. And, when we started, and it was the IGF, some of you, of course, know about this Inter-Governance Forum. The first day this thing started, maybe 20 years ago, and governments were participating to this meeting. But government reps fail to really understand what people are talking about, Internet governance, what exactly? But 2, 3, 4 years later, you see government entities now talking about domain names, talking about we want to manage our domain name. And for me, who run across Africa, meeting ministers
to have minister meet me and then say, well, I understand my domain name is being managed outside my country. Never, it should not be happening. We want to manage this thing. Hearing this from a decision maker, from a minister, for me, I mean, it's something quite important that they have understood, they got the knowledge that we do have these resources and that we need to manage those resources. The other thing is about, the best practices that we need to share. We cited countries such as I'm here, that you guys are doing interesting things. South Africa, them. We have big places also where things are happening, Kenya, for instance, Egypt. All of these are there. So how are you really organizing so that you share that, sort of best practices across the board? Is that the role of AfTLD? Or is that a role for any other sort of, organization to share those best practices? Because that's what it is about. Today, we do have close to what, 7, 8, or 10 countries in Africa that are running after it. As far as ICANN is concerned, this is quite simple. You just follow a few guidelines. But yet you have countries that really fail to follow those guidelines. So what are the best practices there? I mean, how did countries manage to get, I would say back, the management of the domain name? It's not about ICANN. ICANN has a procedure in place. You just have to follow the procedures. These are simple things I believe that one should be doing in the continental sort of environment. Okay, how are we sharing those knowledges? The country X, I'm not going to cite names, is trying to get a delegation of CCTLD, but it's not succeeding. But how much is he talking with other CCTLD to really understand what it takes? That's something that for me is quite important. Opportunities. The other thing. And you are talking about younger generation. It's about them seizing the opportunity that are there. I mean, why do I get a domain name? Or do I have any example of people that have succeeded, in getting those domain names, in renewing those domain names because they really understood what it takes and what it's bringing to them? Was that the impact? I think these are the questions we should be putting. So for me, it's about seeing the opportunities and work around them. And finally, maybe innovations. How do we also innovate in this field? And who are the, best innovators? Some point, we're talking about, mobile, no, not mobile, but this online payment. This is more than 10 years that this is being, that question is being put, to CCTLDs in Africa. Where are we? I mean, today with mobile money, it's so simple to do those things. So what has been done and what has been done? Aggregating, the payments, all of this is possible. The question could be why aren't certain, kind of CCTLDs not doing this? So these are the questions. Sorry to be putting so many questions, but the way I see it, and I'm one of those who say that internet governance is about 90%, can be sorted out in your countries, not just about global, discussion. So accessibility to the internet is your country. Nobody is going to make the right decision, if the regulator, the government, don't take the right decision to make sure that accessibility is there, that the appropriate infrastructure, is there. Nobody is going to do this in international fora where we debate the issues. But we don't do those things because we can't do it. So yes, these are the keywords that I do have. Of course, any failures, again, back to the Alain. Of course, there are failures. And I'm not going to go through the land of opportunity that Africa is. We do have figures here. 65% is youth. One of the places where internet, connectivity is growing it's so high in Africa, what you have today. So the opportunities are there. But plenty of places that we are having, 5G, things are happening. Question is, how are we really seizing that, this opportunity? And it takes, some sort of innovation, And also for younger generation, it takes some sort of, how should I say, vision, on what matters here. Failures has been there. I spoke about, the way the partners will be working together, having to respect, their own regulations. It can create trouble. Decision can take ages, to be taken. But in the long run, we managed to get over that one. That's, for me, that was the key failure, of course. And of course, and finally, it's also the way we communicate, with those who make decisions. We're talking about multi-stakeholder environment, how the techies are really talking with decision makers in countries. When you sign sort of action plan to sign your zone file in 6 months' time, then after 7 months, you haven't really done anything. So how do you account for that, and whom are you, whom are you really kind of reporting back to, in your country? Why haven't you signed your zone file if you understood why you should be doing these things? These are quite simple questions that I think we really need to put that question on national level so that people understand why we should be doing this and why we shouldn't be doing that. So many examples are there actually to show that. Now, CCTLD versus GTLDs, we're certainly going to have the next round of the new GTLD at ICANN. Question could be, well, how much are you guys following the sub-pro? And what are you going to do next time? Because the first iteration, Africa was about 13 sort of domain name that was requested from just one country out of the 54. So how much are you guys getting prepared, to be part of this for the next round? I mean, these are questions for you. So yes, I have to stop here, and but I hope I provided some sort of response to the questions. Thank you. There are questions.
Thank you very much. I see Grace. Before we take the next round of questions, if you permit, we haven't afforded Dr. Alex to respond to some of the questions. Doc, are you still there? Are you able to respond to some of the questions made?
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le modérateur.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. It's very helpful to have all of these questions and to have some answers to them. I think that, however, we sometimes forget what we are talking about and where we are going. If we look at the context of the African CCTLDs, the value chain of the domain name industry is dependent upon a number of stakeholders. And these stakeholders are not necessarily state stakeholders. We can only have a DNS industry if we have a performing actor, if we can connect to the internet in the right operational condition at the right price. We can only have a domain name operators if we have local hosting conditions that comply or match the buying power of our citizens, of our registrants. We can only develop a domain name industries if we have registrars that match the local economy and its abilities. So yes, there are a lot of questions, but comparing the development of CCTLDs in Africa at the local level in a specific country to the development of the .com cannot be done. It's an aberration. And we forget that. There is an opportunity, there is a need of local governance at the level of the CCTLDs. I think that's obvious. Pierre talked about it. I won't go back on that. But the economic operators and the value chain for those who develop those domains, whether it is registrars, those that are accredited by ICANN, or whether it is local registrars, they need to also work on hosting and bring local solutions that match the buying power. And then as far as the role of universities, of course, is to train engineers, to train technical experts in the different areas. And I will give you one example, but today in Senegal, the registry of the country was turned into a research and training center. The idea is specifically to increase the level of training in order to promote the domain name industry. So universities are doing their job. They are training technical experts. So the right question is not what is the role of universities, but rather what is the role of the industry, of the registrars. They need to be involved in the training. The technical people that we train are not trained practically. They know the theory. So we need to coordinate the efforts between the operators, the registrars, and the registries to that effect. I think that's very important. As far as cost, I think there was a question about cost of domain names. A great effort is being carried out. And I think that I heard ZADNA talk about the decrease in the cost. In all countries, costs are being decreased by 50%, specifically in order to match the buying power of registrants. So there are some efforts that are being done, but the issue is still current today. We are dependent upon other actors that don't necessarily see things in the same way. And that's what's important at the local level. And I think that we need to ask different questions. How can we improve hosting in the continent so that at every level, at the African level, also, how can we have access to those resources in order to develop the hosting process in the continent? Local hosting. I think that would be very good. I would love to have a registry or registrars that works with Kenya or South Africa in order to host Senegalese website in order to promote local content development. This is what I truly think is important. I think that the development of technologies such as DNSSEC is very dependent upon filling those gaps. We need to have more action carried out in the different countries, in regional spaces, so to speak, so that we can reason not from a technical standpoint, but from a business model standpoint. We need to show what domain names can bring economically. I think that the governments will be open to that if we show them how valuable that is. At this point, all they see is that those are rare resources that we need to grab to avoid a certain number of abusive behaviors. I don't want to speak too long, but I think that as far as universities, I wanted to bring that up. I think that we need to develop the value chain. And for the next forum, I think we need to call on the connectivity operators so that they can explain their perspective, what they can do in order to be involved in the development for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. Very much, Doc. I think it's always important to always come to the center when you have such engagements and discussions. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are slightly going to run over our time, our allocated time, but it's important to take the questions in the room. And also those are online. I see 4 questions. So I will start with online. Oh, there's now 7, 8. Program director, how do we deal with this one? I think it comes from the colleagues. So if colleagues are patient enough just to allow us to engage and really deal with these issues, 10 more minutes or 15 more minutes. So I'll do it in this way. We'll take the online ones and then we'll come into the room. We'll start with Grace, Ali, then the gentleman, and the last question will be the gentleman this side. So in that order, please. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a question from Moses Owini from Uganda. What is currently being done to lower the cost of CCTLDs, which is higher than those of .com, especially in the African context? The 2016 DNS study also provided recommendations to lower this cost. What has so far been done?
I think we can take all of them. Is that the only one that's there?
No, there are more questions.
Yes, ma'am.
From Boubacar So, the .gm CCTLD is not keen on implementing the NSEC at the moment. And for me as a registrar, and of course as a domain owner too, this is frustrating. What is the best way to approach CCTLD to implement the NSEC? Is there any ICANN policy that can be used to persuade CCTLDs to implement best practices?
I think that covers it. Then we can take the ones in the room. There's quite a number of them. I hope colleagues are noting them down. Ma'am.
So thank you. I just had a question. I wanted to comment on what my colleague from Kenya related a few minutes ago. He spoke about the issue of domain name renewals in Africa, and Pierre Dandjinou mentioned about it as well, which I still believe it's not a case of Kenya, but it's an issue across the continent. So my question to the panelists, and I'm happy that we have ZADNA on the panel. So I would wish to hear from you, what are you doing in South Africa? Or if there is anyone who is not facing this challenge, what are you doing to keep renewals? For instance, in our country, if I look at the statistics, the percentage of the domain name registration is closer to deletion. So what do we do? Is there any program probably to AfTLD that can convene the CCTLDs to discuss about this challenge so that we can see how to overcome it? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je n'ai pas une question, mais c'était un commentaire. Je ne sais pas si je peux continuer.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I can continue. I didn't have a question. I had a comment. A comment on what Alan asked. As we said, Alan always has challenging questions that truly moves the communication forward in their interaction. In terms of the sustainability of this event or similar events, in terms of digital development or digital development of the DNS industry in Africa, Ali Adji of AfTLD, I wanted to mention. But one of the very important point that was mentioned in terms of sustainability and success of these different events is that as Africans, we need to take ownership and we need to fund our own initiatives. Because if you take the example of these events, all we can see is that it's local businesses, local based in our different countries that sponsor these events. However, it seems that there is always some sort of a process that needs to be set up in order to do so. And I think that today, if we truly do awareness raising well in the different countries, perhaps these stakeholders can create budgetary items in order to fund these different activities. And then what would be the outcome? Well, I think that we can be very sincere in our discussion, truly define the right obstacles, and in the end, find solutions to these different issues outlined. We also talked about involving universities and so forth. I think that there are some investment initiatives that can be done without going through the university network. What I mean is that the university network is about defining the right challenges, because they are oriented towards the future. The future meaning that these people who are in school, but I think that it seems we have lost the sound from the speaker. I believe we have lost connection.
Getting involved left, right, and center into the DNS discussion. What kind of business value are we getting? What kind of administrative value are we getting as governments start to adopt, official domain names for their departments, for their schools, as Shim said, and for businesses? What kind of value are these costs competing for? What is that business value that every DNS item is going to develop? But we cannot get that if the business community is not, very involved in the forums, in the decision making, and in partaking of the activities of the Africa DNS Forum, for instance, and other DNS ecosystem processes. So my challenge is to the leadership that we need to now start expanding that ecosystem to all the other major players, and you can have the deletion as a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My plea to the two hands. Looking at time, or the third one, looking at the time, I have to cut them off because I also have to afford the panel to talk. Yes. So what I'm going to ask, you will meet them in the corridors during lunch. Please, I believe they have unforgettable faces, even under their masks. So you will just note them. For the speaker who's online, I think Parag is available to take down the questions you might have. I myself will also be here. I'm not shying away from the questions. I have the opportunity to also address you later today. I think I will adequately address some of the questions we have as the form part of my presentation. So with that said, and as I wrap up, I think I'll start with Kevin, Pierre, and then move on to Alex online in response to the questions that are posed and also your closing remarks, please. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you for the questions. So just writing them down, seeing which ones I could answer, maybe some are for AfTLD and ICANN to answer. So I'll answer some and then just add a few more comments. So I think in terms of the sustainability, just towards what Ali Haji and what Alain was talking about, I think sustainability is also tied to value. So if the stakeholders in this event, can see value in attending the DNS forum, I think the sustainability will automatically be solved by that. So in terms of the content and also the organization of the event, the structure of the event has to be in a way that when you come to the DNS forum, you actually have value. And when that value can be demonstrated, I think the sustainability is solved by that. And then I just wanted to touch also on universities because, what role do universities have with DNS? Now, as ISOC, we were supporting a training event last week to bring in more women engineers into technology, so to speak. And we had one of the comments from someone from academia, and he said, there is a gap between what is being covered in academia and what the industry, the employers are looking for. So, and he said, these were his words, he said, as an academic, I have a curriculum that I have to teach and I cannot divert from that. So what that means is there is an opportunity for other players to come in and step in, especially when it comes to the topic of the day of DNS. This is a work to network operator groups. How can we bridge the gap that is between what is being covered in the universities and what the industry wants in terms of skill base? And I also have to mention here that I think a good formula can be what the Benin DNS Forum has been doing, because what the Benin DNS Forum has been doing is they have an event just like this, but they also have a training on DNS, and they even have what they call Women DNS Academy, which is DNS focused training for ladies to teach them more about DNS. So I think that sort of community, I think there's an opportunity there for network operator groups, for training organizations to bridge the gap between what is being covered in our colleges and academia and what the industry is actually looking for in terms of skill base. And I believe also for DNS, that is also the same. So I think I'll stop here because of time and invite the rest of the panelists to answer the other questions.
Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you very much. I will just leave some of the question to AfTLD and eventually whoever has any answer to them, because these are quite interesting questions, especially the one about the lack of renewal, these things, and it's part of what we also are saying, which is how do we really change the best practices, and how, in fact, how do we locate those best practices? As far as ICANN is concerned, I would just like to point out a few things that we are here to support. And the way we support, for instance, is about providing appropriate tools, for instance, for some of the projects that you might be having. For instance, one of those tools is the DNS market study in Africa. We had one 5 years ago, I believe. Now we are just launching a new one, which is going to give us a full picture of the DNS environment in Africa. We hope it's going to be as interesting and important as the first one. That will really give us, details on, well, how is this DNS, thriving in Africa, and from different, angles. So could be business, could be security, could be so many services and things like that. It has been launched, and then the call to you will be that you should just respond to whatever questionnaire eventually, or the interviews that will be conducted in the course of this. And we will be expecting a full study down the line, say in 6 to 8 months, time. So please follow up with this one and do contribute to this, which is one of the tools that we are having. The second one is also, you talk about the university. Right now, we have a program about universal acceptance. How do you make your system compliant? And we have a project here. It's going to start, coming to 2 months. It's about making sure that the universities, especially we are associating with the Africa Association of Universities, to do a few things, meaning work so that we build capacity for different system operators, of course in the academia, research centers, but eventually also in the public sector, so that they are in a position to understand what it takes to be compliant with universal acceptance, what is to be done in terms of your different systems. So hands-on practice, so that people are able to really apply those to the system. This is the second tool. The other one is about we spoke about the content, and of course, ICANN is not in that field actually, but there's one component of it which is the scripts. If we were to work on the African languages, we do have more than 2,000 of them, but we also know that technically they can all be used on the net. You can always have your query in your kind of own language, if the script exists. We work with Ethiopia, which is the only one country today that we do have scripts on the Almaric. We would like to have more on that. So it means that you put people to work so that they come up with the appropriate script for your languages, and that people might not just be, how should I say, forced to be functioning in French, English, or whatever language for their own languages. This is possible, but it means that we do our homework, and of course, we do have the tools that is needed, and we need the team to be formed, country level, so that they work on this thing. So those tools certainly are going to provide, more opportunities, for Africa. So yeah, that's what I would like to share at this point. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Pierre. I think briefly online, Alex, your response to the questions, comments, and also your closing remarks. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Molehe. Merci de me...
Thank you very much. Thank you, Molehe. I won't take long. I just wanted to once again stress the need to collaborate. I am lucky to be a part of the university network here, to be knowledgeable in our national registry because I've worked with them for so long. And so I take note of everything Paul said, and I would like to stress what he says about working with universities and making sure everyone is represented. But what I think is most important is that we must not forget to align our activities. I've always said we have to think locally, work globally. So we need to think globally, work locally. So to look at the global situation and then see how we need to adapt locally to make sure everyone can be involved. And we've made great headway ever since. We have created a space to communicate. We have generated synergies between different groups. For instance, I think here of the dynamic that we have generated within the International Ethnic College, which gathers different French-speaking CCTLDs. And that is a dynamic in itself, which we are trying to bolster. But it takes work with big registries such as ZADNA, with Quaynor from Kenya. And I think what's particular to our content, what makes us unique is our mindset. There are French-speaking people, English-speaking people, pragmatics, conservatives, and we need to find a way to create a synergy between it all. We always say our future is here, and it will be here for a number of years. It's coming. All of this is happening. And so I would like to call upon all CCTLDs to make sure everything we're working towards can be materialized. It is up to us to work on this to make it a reality. We can contribute, we can support it financially, with knowledge, or with other means, but we need to stand up and to have something that is sustainable and that can go on working beyond us, that it will still be active when we're not, that it will still be here in the future, that it will still work. So thank you for the possibility of sharing with everyone who's in Nairobi, and thank you to Kinnick once again for having held this DNS forum.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the panel that we had today. I think it goes without saying it was one of those, and I think it will still remain one of those toughest ones for the day. You can't take a journey of reflection without being critical to yourself. And what I really appreciate from the audience and the participants online is really, while we celebrate, we don't forget that there has to be someone or some people that remain critical and objective and ask very tough questions that would